Welcome to The Woolly Way, a podcast specifically for dairy shepherds. That is, folks wanting to raise sheep for the purpose of harvesting milk. I am your host, Rachel Hester.
And I'm Liv Fox. We cover all things pertaining to raising dairy sheep here, be it animal nutrition, housing, healthcare, lambing tips, cheese making, and even some butchery and fighter art.
After all, if you raise dairy sheep, you are going to have wool, and if your operation is successful, you'll eventually have surplus lambs to decide what to do with.
Ethical animal husbandry is the focus here, as well as sustainable agriculture. We want to provide you with the information you need to start and continue your dairy sheep operation in the best way possible for you, your sheep, and the amazing world we live in.
So grab a nice cup of sheet milk and let's dive in.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the Woolly Way. Rachel, just starting off right off the bat here. I see you got something in the background behind you. What's going on at your farm?
If you're on iTunes or Spotify, it won't do you much good. But if you're on YouTube, you can see we've got our little lambing shelter up in the background. So this year, our lambing barn has not yet been mucked out, and right when we were like, oh, we should probably get that situated, was when everyone in our county just started dropping like flies to the crud. So we don't have a backhoe or a tractor or anything smart you should have if you're in agriculture. We just have our 2 hands and a shovel. And I mean, it's we haven't touched that barn since last summer, so I mean, it really needs cleaned out before babies drop. So and then of course, once we made that discovery, the ewe behind me waddles past with like some colostrum dripping off her udder, and I'm like, well, I don't think she's going to wait until we get the barn all sanitized. Kyle had this brilliant stroke of genius. He has access to free pallets at his work, so he's like, well, why don't I he's like, why don't I just knock up some jugs in the front yard just as a precaution? And then that way
Smart
we can
man.
put, I do keep him around for a couple of reasons. Intelligence is one of those. His training for emergencies just really comes in handy sometimes. So yeah, he knocked up one and put a little cattle panel around it. And I was like, I kind of like that. So we had 4 ewes looking like they were ready to pop. So we made 4 jugs. And literally, as soon as that last one was done, the next morning we walked out and there was lambs on the ground.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because, we always slide across the finish line, like, by the skin of our teeth when it comes to deadlines and stuff.
Yeah.
So, and then a huge storm rolled in where the temperatures were just going haywire. So we put all the ewes in jugs. And then that way, when he goes to work, I can just, my front door is right around there. So I can just open up the front door, shine a flashlight out, or go and take a peek at him. And I said to Kyle, this might be how we just lamb from now on because, necessity is the mother of invention. But it's healthier for them to drop on pasture. It's just where we have such a mixed flock of dairy crosses and then the Gulf Coast native ferals. The heritage breeds will steal other people's lambs when they're pregnant, which is just bad news for everyone because then the ewe doesn't bond. Won't take them back. And bottle babies make great social media content, but
they're a lot of work. They are
I don't
so
have
much
like if
work.
I don't have that hormonal bond at 3 a.m. when you want food, I'm like, you know what, die, okay? Because you have rent in your stomach. I don't need to take care of you that badly. So there's that little tidbit for you, right, people.
The brutal.
So I don't want bottle babies. They make again great content, great to play with the kids, horrible on my nerves and cortisol levels. So I was like, let's get everyone in jugs while the weather's doing this crazy up and down. Like I could wear a t-shirt right now if I wasn't getting over being sick because it's so warm. But then this weekend is supposed to drop down again, and either we'll have a tornado or snow. They're not really sure which yet. So that keeps
both
all
can
the
be destructive.
Close. Right. So anyway,
let's vote for snow though. That's less destructive.
Would prefer the snow to the tornado for multiple reasons, but yeah, I think we're gonna switch our lambing to we'll do temporary jugs in the front yard with panels and pallets, and then that way, once everyone's done lambing, we just break it all apart, let the front yard rest for a month, everything decomposes, and there's no mucking or potential for diseases spreading because like in the barn there's no sunlight ever there, so it can't naturally disinfect like it could out on pasture. So
right.
Anyway, a little accidental stroke of genius that I'm very glad we stumbled upon. So but you get to see the cute lambs in the background because I just figured outside would be better for recording today since my menfolk are all down with the crud. So that's my farm
Yeah,
up.
well, I don't think any of us are going to complain about watching cute little lambs in the background. So
No.
for
They
those
are.
of you who are not listening or watching on YouTube, I definitely highly encourage you. Although by the time this airs, you're probably already going to have shared lambing videos and pictures on your social media challenge. Not too much happening up in my neck of the woods. We still have like a solid 3 feet of snow. We're still 2.5 months away from lambing. So I am starting to see some baby bellies. But other than that, it's just status quo up here in northern Michigan. So I want to introduce our guest today, Robin Jackson, also known as Cheese from Scratch on social media, correct?
Yes, Cheese from Scratch.
All right. Well, thank you so much for agreeing to come on our podcast. And we would like to discuss cheeses and like the cheese making process because you are very good at it. I follow you on Instagram quite closely and I'm always like, I want to do that. So I do have aspirations to be good like you. But could you start off introducing yourself? There's probably a handful of folks, or actually I'm finding a fair amount of folks out there who don't find out about different social media people that are, you know, sharing what they're doing on their farm, whether it be cheese making or dairy sheep or whatever. So why don't you tell us about yourself, like where you're located, how you got into cheese making, and how long you've been making cheese, that kind of along those lines.
For sure, yeah. So I'm from Canada, British Columbia, Canada. My husband and I have a beef cattle ranch here, so we are just about, I'm going to start like any day, start calving out 250 head of beef cattle. But
Okay.
We also have a couple dairy cows on our homestead or ranch that we keep primarily with the purpose of using their milk to make all sorts of different cheeses for our family. So I started teaching cheese making through Cheese from Scratch probably, I think it's about 5 years ago now.
Okay.
And started teaching on Instagram, and then started had a cheese making course and a membership, and then I had the opportunity to be able to write a book, which was really cool. So I've been slinging that pretty hard the last year. So that's been a very fun thing. So that's kind of how my cheese making journey started. We've got 3 kids here. They're all fairly young. Our oldest is 12 and our youngest is 5. So that's kind of our story, our background story.
Yeah. So I'm assuming your family loves basically all things dairy.
Yeah. So my husband, so I'm from Canada. Like this area I grew up, was born and raised on a cattle ranch near here. But my husband's actually from Wisconsin. So he moved to Canada probably about 20 years ago. And then we met and married a few years after that. And he just really missed the cheeses from Wisconsin. They were on a dairy farm in Wisconsin and then moved here to become cattle ranchers. And so he always wanted a milk cow, and he ended up bringing a milk cow home about 10 years ago, or over 10 years ago now, and was like, can you learn how to make some cheese? And the purpose of the milk cow was to use as a nanny cow for our ranch, but then we just ended up loving it so much, and I ended up loving cheese making and learning how to make some cheeses for our family, and then that's kind of how I got started in it. And then so I make a lot of cheeses that are kind of ones that you're going to see around Wisconsin, just because my inspiration came from a cheese state boy.
Yeah. I was going to say no more. When you said he was from Wisconsin, I was like, I get it.
Yeah. He's like, you can't get cheese in Canada. So he made it happen for himself. So yeah.
I can think of so many people who would just love it if they came home one day and their husband was like, Happy Valentine's Day. Here's your dairy cow. Please make me cheese.
Yeah.
You know, the rest is history. But yeah.
I did not love it at the time. I thought, oh my goodness, the dairy cow is so intimidating. But now I absolutely adore dairy cows. They're like my favorite animal in the entire world.
Oh, I was.
But it definitely was not like, I was not in that place. We had a little baby. Our oldest was just a baby when he brought it home, and I was just like.
So he brought her home unannounced.
Idyllic.
So Robin, when your husband brought the dairy cow home, it sounds like there wasn't a conversation that happened.
No,
the cow just came home.
I was surprised. I came home from work. I used to be an operating room nurse, and I came home from work, and there was a cow in the front pen. We had just started calving though, so the guys was we were going to use it as a nanny cow, which actually like we have used a lot of nanny cows on the ranch, and it just is such a great way to be able to help out like twin moms and stuff for beef cows. So that's really what the guys was around it, and for whatever reason we ended up, making a lot of cheese from that cow's milk, and then she just spiraled into us like eventually ending up with our own family milk cow that was specifically for house milk.
Okay. So how many cows do you guys have now for dairy purposes?
Dairy cows? So we have 2 house cows that I milk every day, and then we've got a couple nanny cows for the ranch still as well. And so I'll milk them like if they calf them, we don't have an extra calf to put on her. I'll milk them for not very long usually, and then we can usually find something to put on them.
Okay. And when you're milking, are you calf sharing, or are you milking twice a day, or how do you manage
I try my best
milk?
to be able to calf share, and I've been able to the last couple years, which is really nice. So I'm milking 2 cows right now just once a day, and they each have a calf on them. So I just lock the calf up at night, and then in the morning I milk, and then I reunite them with their calves. I've got one is a brown Swiss. She's a really big producer. So she's kind of in peak lactation. She's just kind of leaving peak lactation right now. So I'm getting about 4 to 5 gallons from her a day. And then my other cow, she calved in October. So she's through peak. So I'm only taking about a gallon from her a day. And then she's got the calf on her too.
Okay.
Yeah, so lots of milk.
That's what I was like, oh my gosh, that's a lot of milk.
Yeah, and like that's the thing about cheese making. You need quite a bit of milk to make certain types of cheeses, but I'm so jealous about you guys with your sheep because you guys can freeze your milk and save it up for cheese making, which is just not something that cow's milk cheesemakers do. The composition of the milk changes a lot when it freezes. But it's something that standardly people in the sheep community as well as the goat community are able to just freeze that milk and then save enough up for a batch and then make the cheeses that they want to.
Yes. So I have been one of those people that has saved milk for cheese making in the wintertime, because previously I used to work in agronomy. So in the summertime, like basically, lambing through summer into fall, like was really busy for work. So I always told myself foolishly, like, I'll make cheese in the wintertime. I'll have more time in the wintertime. I think I do have more time for sure. But I also forget about it because it's in my deep freezer, which I honestly just use that freezer to store milk. So I'm not getting in and out of it to be like, oh yeah, that milk. So I need to make some cheese though, so that way I can empty my freezer out for this year's milk. So I need to do better for sure, and take advantage of that ability to be able to freeze it and thaw it and have it not get funky.
Yeah, exactly. And sheep's milk is like all cheesemakers are people that have made cheese for a while. They're like so jealous about sheep milk because it's just such a good, it's like the elite cheese making milk. It makes the best cheeses.
Yes. I can vouch for that. It was late winter, early spring last year. A friend and I, we went and did like a cheese making class at a local cheesemakers, like they make cheese commercially. And I wore my North America Dairy Sheep shirt, and so did she. And he was like, "You guys have dairy sheep?" And we're like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Do you have milk for sale?" And we were like, "No." And then my friend Amy chimes up and goes, "But Liv wants to have a commercial sheep dairy." And I just looked at her and I was like, "Yes." In the next like 5 to 10 years, like not tomorrow, not next year. And he all but told me, he said, as soon as you're licensed and you can sell raw milk for cheese making purposes and whatnot, he said, we will buy every spare gallon that you have. So it's good to know the market is there. I just have to be able to build the facilities to get there, which it'll happen eventually, but it just takes time and money.
Yes. Time and money.
The most lucrative operations I've heard of is like what you're talking about, Liv, is you have the shepherd who runs the milking operation, but then there's a contract with the cheesemaker and they produce the cheese, and that way they're both able to actually bring in a profit. Because I mean, that's one thing, when we first started, I was kind of like you, like, oh, we have a barn and an RV hookup at the top of our hill, and it's got electric and septic and water already hooked up. There's just nothing there. So when I first got here, I'm like, I'll make just a little, cheesery there, and we'll just slap up a actual milking parlor and just, sneeze and install a little cheese place because it's that easy in America to get all that done.
Right.
as we've done this, I'm just like, yeah, I don't think that's gonna be the thing, because I like making cheese enough for like my family. I don't think I want to be doing that full time, but I get contacted enough by people who want to have like some kind of farm fresh food operation where they're like, as soon as you have milk, we'll buy every drop you have, which again is like, yes, it's merely a matter of volume, nothing else to do with, licensure or anything else, legality and all that razzmatazz. But sure, yes, that sounds great. But so yeah, it is interesting, the interest, because like you said, Robin, I mean, it's like the creme de la creme of cheese making. And last year I was able to make some cow cheeses and sheep cheeses side by side. And it was fascinating. Just like I would make the exact same cheese with the exact same recipe, which you do have to adjust slightly for the sheep milk. And the whey waste with the sheep milk was so much less than the cow cheeses, and just how fast it coagulated. Do what?
Was it about double? Like you got about double yield from your cheese, from your sheeps to your cows?
Yeah, like I would actually just take all the cow whey and I would soak the stanchion feed for the next day for the sheep and the cow with the whey, which may sound weird, but our parasite loads just dropped hugely when we did that, with the sheep especially. But with the sheep whey, I use that in home fermenting, and I mean, I only had enough sheep whey to freeze to last us through the winter for home fermentation. I mean, I didn't have any extra. Like, there was just such little whey waste from the cheese making with the sheep milk versus the cow milk. Whereas, like, the cow milk whey, I was just dumping it essentially to whatever would drink it.
Yeah, exactly. I find that so cool because, like, as I said, like right now I'm getting about 5 to 6 gallons of milk a day. And so you bring that milk in, you make it into cheese, and then now you've got 5 to 6 gallons of whey that you now have to deal with. And it's like a burden. Whereas if you have a small homestead and you have a few dairy sheep and you're only getting enough whey that you can actually use, like that's amazing that you can be able to store it up and it's not going to go to waste in any sense. I mean, it never goes to waste. It's always being used for something, but it is it's a bit of an overwhelming burden that you have when you do have a dairy cow.
Yeah, you have to be really creative. And our cow only gives 2.5 gallons at peak lactation. Like, she's the perfect little homestead cow. Doesn't need a lot of input. She is a pure A2 Jersey, but like, it's not where we're getting 6 to 8 gallons a day and have to pump her full of grain to maintain that. She just gets a little bit when we milk her, and that keeps her conditioned. But even still, it's like, I mean, you're just constantly thinking of ways like, okay, now do I put this whey in a, sprayer and spray my apple trees with it? Like, how do I find ways to get rid of all this whey? Versus with the sheep, it's like, I make some sourdough bread, I make some kvass, and that's the whey from the cheese making. So we're done, which is nice.
Yeah, that's amazing. And like, especially like, I think dairy sheep are such a good option for small homesteads because that, as you said, you can freeze it. You've not overwhelmed by the whey. Like, there's just, it works so much better for smaller operations than these high production dairy cows.
Yeah. So there is a local creamery to me. It's like 15 minutes away from my house, and they have primarily Jersey cows, and they make Gouda cheese, and they have a storefront for their Gouda cheese, and they also make ice cream. But they shared this winter, and I don't know if they just do it in the wintertime or if they do it in the summertime too, because they're making cheese like every day. They feed the whey back to the cattle, like they put it in a water trough, and the cows just come and drink it. So I don't know if they have a problem, with it going bad when it gets really hot and humid, because we do get pretty hot and humid here July and August.
If you dilute but I just thought that wouldn't be a problem.
Okay. And maybe they do. I don't know if they just give it back like straight, like from the cheese making, or if they add water. It was definitely, you could tell it wasn't just water from the looks of it. It had a white tone to it.
Yeah. And I mean, the fermentation of the cheese making also provides some protection for it, like going bad. Like, I wouldn't be worried about, 24-hour-old whey. I mean, if it was sitting in there for like a long time, then you'd start to maybe have to worry about it. But because it's so acidic coming out of the cheese pot, it's like probably not really an issue for that short term.
Okay. Yeah. It looks like they had a way to agitate it too. So probably like keep circulating it in the tank. So I just found it really fascinating. I would have never have thought to do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is really interesting.
I got so many I still get weird looks when I say I feed the whey back to the ruminants, which, but it's no different than feeding your chickens their eggshells back for the calcium. I mean, it's just, it's a mineral output and you're giving it back to them. So, I mean, it's what old timers used to do before we had all the fancy farm stores on every corner, but.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I want to research that more because, I don't feed mine back to my dairy animals, but that is really interesting. I'm interested in looking
Yeah.
into it a bit more.
Especially with all the craze around, is it grass fed and don't feed grain because grain is evil, and if you feed grain you're a horrible, terrible, abusive person. It's like, well, it there are reasons for concern, financial being my primary one, but acidosis is a concern too. But if you're soaking your grain, especially in whey where it's, like you said, a probiotic and it's got all those minerals and it's acidic, you're breaking down those grain, you're breaking down the concerns that people have with grain. And so it's easier for the ruminant to digest. It's not going to spike their acid levels, and it alkalizes their bodies so they're less prone to parasites. So it's a really fascinating little thing. I, again, stumbled on last year from necessity because we just had gallons and gallons and gallons of whey. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't want this. Where do I put it? Here, sheep, drink it. See if you get better.
And that's how, like, so many things are discovered. Like, we forget that, but like so many things just happen by circumstance that we like stumble upon and are like, oh, this actually really works, so I'm just going to do this.
Yeah.
We didn't always have science to back our ideas through.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Hey guys, I just wanted to interrupt quick to give a shout out to our sponsor, the North America Dairy Sheep Association. NADSA is open to any sheep breed or crossed used for milking purposes. NADSA supports dairy shepherds and is elevating dairy standards in sheep in America. NADSA now offers a Milk Star program, has sanctioned dairy sheep shows, and is now offering a breed up program. You can become a member or get more information by going to the website www.northamericadairysheep.org, or you can email the association at northamericadairysheep@gmail.com. We are so thankful to NADSA for sponsoring this podcast and helping bring more resources to the dairy sheep community. Stay tuned for future podcast episodes where we talk to NADSA board members about what NADSA is trying to accomplish in America for the dairy sheep community.
Yeah.
So, Robin, I think we've established that I'm a very novice cheesemaker. Novice is I've made one hard cheese my entire life. I made it last spring. So for myself and other newbies who have never made cheese, but I feel like a lot of people are intimidated by the thought of making a hard cheese. They're worried about contamination, that kind of thing. So for folks, I know I have seen things about clabber. What's the difference between like clabber, yogurt, and sour cream? Like, are they all like kind of the same thing? Not really. Like, I know you can use clabber as a culture for making cheese.
Yeah. Okay. So this is one of my favorite subjects about cheese
making
is clabber. So clabber can be a cheese making starter culture. So anytime you are going to be making cheese that's going to be aged, you're going to need some sort of starter culture. So in today's modern world, most of those starter cultures are coming on from online at the cheese supply store. You can go online, you can see all sorts of different freeze-dried cultures that you can buy in little packets, and then you can add those into your milk and you can use that as a starter culture for your cheese. But more and more, myself as well as other people have been moving towards more natural practices when it comes to starter cultures for our cheese making. So I now keep something called a clabber culture on my counter, and it's different than just clabber. It's actually a culture, like same as if you're going to be keeping a sourdough starter, that's a starter. So this clabber culture, I start it the same as if you're just going to start clabber. So I take raw milk that has all sorts of good lactic bacteria within it. I take that fresh raw milk and I set it out on the counter, probably about 3-4 days later, it's going to be coagulated. And you can do this with sheep's milk too. It works the same way as long as it's raw milk. And then after that 3 to 4 days, you're going to see that it's coagulated. You're going to take about a tablespoon of that clabber. You're going to feed it to new fresh milk. And now you've just turned that into a starter culture. So now you've taken that and you've fed it to new fresh milk, and you're going to see coagulation in that milk in probably 12 to 24 hours. And then you're again just going to take a little bit of that, feed it to new fresh raw milk, and you again are going to see that coagulation in 12 to 24 hours. And so you've taken this clabber and you've turned it into a culture. And the reason that it works as a cheese-making starter culture is that all of those different freeze-dried cultures that are on the cheese supply website, what they are is lactic bacterias. So they're different strains of lactic bacterias. And lactic bacterias is this big head category of bacterias that like to feed on sugars, and lactose happens to be the sugar in milk. So when we make these clabber culture, or this clabber culture, we're harnessing the raw milk lactic bacterias that are within that milk, and we're able to kind of grow them basically in our own kitchen. So clabber culture is my preferred natural starter culture, and whether you want to use like freeze-dried cultures or whether you want to use clabber culture, both of them are going to work. It's more about like what you have time for. Like if you don't have time to feed another culture on your counter or like feed another mouth, clabber culture might not be the thing for you. So both of them are going to work. It's just more about what one you have time for. So those are kind of the two main starter cultures that I recommend, whereas yogurt and sour cream, you were saying. So yes, they do have lactic bacteria within them. So for example, clabber makes like the most amazing sour cream. Like you will never taste sour cream like sour cream culture with your clabber culture. But it's more like it's a product that you make from those starter cultures. Yogurt itself too can be used for some cheeses. Sometimes people use it for what are called thermophilic cheeses. So these are cheeses that are typically made at a warmer temperature, because yogurt is typically made at a warmer temperature. So some people will use it for that, but I kind of recommend, like, if you really want to make sure that your cheeses are going to turn out, they're going to taste amazing, leaning into either those freeze-dried cultures or that clabber culture is going to be a really nice thing for you to be able to do. Some people also use kefir as a starter culture. I've used it, I don't love it. All the cheeses that come out of it kind of taste like kefir, which I'm not or anything. So yeah, that's another option as well. But that's kind of the differences between the different starter cultures. So just knowing that if you're planning on making any cheeses that are going to be aged, you're going to need some sort of lactic bacteria or some sort of starter culture to jumpstart the fermentation in your milk, because that's what cheese making really is. It's a form of fermentation.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And also, I just want to jump in and say, like, I bought kefir for years, like the little Life Wave brand or whatever that's got the, neon colors, whatever. And then was like, hey, now we have all these dairy animals. I should just make my own kefir. So I got kefir grains and I made cow milk kefir. And that is when I realized very viscerally that all of the kefir at the grocery store is sweetened a lot, like a lot. And I cannot stand homemade cow kefir. Like, I can make kefir out of cow cream and then I can have it, or I can make kefir out of sheep milk. And then it's okay. Then it's kind of like drinking sour cream, essentially. But it's more of that yogurty taste. But if it's the whole cow milk, my local beasties and my cow milk and the kefir grains and my palate do not like to play together. So, I mean, that's one thing, like, I think for new cheesemakers is that if you're doing a home fermentation like kefir or yogurt or clabber, and you're used to a specific taste, like you for me, it was more beneficial to start with the freeze-dried cultures just to get the technique down of cheese making, and then kind of go more into the wild cultures. I mean, it's kind of like when you learn to make bread, like maybe start with the packaged yeast just so you get what does it mean to form gluten? What does it mean to let your bread proof? And then as you get those skill sets down, then you can go into more of the sourdough, where it's more luck of, did you feed your starter enough? Is your kitchen warm enough? Did you let things, and there's more of a skill set than just the follow the instructions like with the yeast bread.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, exactly.
So, and then I guess just listening to you talk, sounds like you prefer your clabbered culture to freeze-dried cultures.
I definitely do now. But when I started, I didn't know about clabber at all. So when I started, I started with freeze-dried cultures, and it's only been maybe 3 years that I've successfully been using clabber. So I started out quite a few years ago, I read David Asher. He wrote The Art of Natural Cheesemaking. He wrote, it's an amazing book, like such a good book. So I read that book quite a few years ago. It blew my mind because up until that point, I'd only ever used freeze-dried cultures. Everyone talked about how scary raw milk was. And so I read that book and it just changed my views on raw milk, and it changed the idea that you had to use freeze-dried cultures. So I kind of at that point went all into using natural starter cultures. This was probably 5-6 years ago. And unfortunately, after I started doing this, like about 3 months later, I started eating all those cheeses that I had made with those natural starter cultures like kefir and Klaber culture at that point. And they were all disgusting. And I was so disappointed. And I was like, this doesn't work. This is fake news. And then 3 or 4 years ago, I had the opportunity to go and learn live from David Asher. So when I'd gone back to using freeze-dried cultures, I had the opportunity to go and learn live from David Asher, and he showed me what I had been doing wrong. I hadn't been keeping Klaber as a culture. I'd just been like fermenting raw milk on my counter and then putting it in as a starter culture in my cheese making and expecting it to turn out. But it's not going to turn out if the Klaber doesn't already taste beautiful and sweet and like this really good dairy product. And so that was what I was doing wrong. And since I changed that, like I can't go back. Freeze-dried cultures are like, I still keep some in my freezer in case I forget to feed my starter culture, but I'm just in love with Klaber because it works so well. Like all of the cheeses that I used to make with freeze-dried cultures, I make with Klaber culture now, and they've never tasted better. So that's like a positive story out of that, because I did do it wrong at first, and so that's a good thing to know, that you can do it wrong, and so you want to make sure that you're actually feeding it every day. You know, a sourdough baker would never bake with sourdough starter that they didn't feed the day before. It just, they know that that would negatively affect their bread. And so kind of, even though you can't always visually see the differences in your Klaber, just keeping the same principles of keeping a sourdough starter as keeping a Klaber culture is a really good thing to do.
Well, and I guess for me, a big question is, what does your husband think of your cheeses with the Klaber starter? Because that was the whole thing. You know, he wanted cheeses from home. Has he noticed at all?
No, I think they've gotten better.
Okay.
I don't know, Klaber culture, like it still kind of blows my mind, because for so long I thought that it wouldn't work, that I was such a disbeliever in it. And then I started doing it properly, and my cheeses taste better than they tasted before. So that's been a really positive improvement. Yeah, for sure. That's a huge thing. I'm like scaling it down to the homestead level, because 10 years ago when I learned how to make cheese, most of the resources out there were coming from commercial cheesemakers, which no hate against them at all, but it's just different. Like you're making cheese from more than one dairy animal, which is the same case for you guys with sheep.
Right. But they're doing such large amounts.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so sterile, and they have so many legalities that they have to be following. And so it's just so different. And that's what freeze-dried cultures, they were developed for that. They were developed to create a standardized product. And that's great. It works really well for people. But it's also cool to know that, there isn't some natural options that if we want to, we can start implementing in our kitchens. And a lot of it comes down to just having that time to like kind of experiment. And I like to tell people to kind of start gradually. So, the very first step is just to get your Klaber culture going and get it to a point where it's tasting really good and you're really enjoying it. You can drink it just like kefir. And then the next step would be taking that and feeding it to a larger pot of milk. Just like you're going to feed it to your little jar of milk, but now you're going to feed it to a larger pot. And then the next day you can take that, it will be coagulated, you can strain it off, and now you have cream cheese. And then just kind of building up from there to a point where eventually, you're making hard cheeses, but it helps you to kind of build the trust around it too, because you're like, oh, hey, this cream cheese really tastes good. This feta cheese that I'm making really tastes good. And it just helps you to get up to that confidence level where you trust that it's actually going to work.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good way to point it out, is trust, building up the trust in your Klaber, because like you said, if you don't know that you trust it yet, and you go all in making these hard cheeses and let them age for 3 months, and then you cut into them and have them not taste good, like that would be so disappointing and so heart-wrenching, because you're not going to suck it up and eat it. Somebody out, the chickens or the pigs or someone's going to eat it, but it's not going to be you or your family. So I think that's a perfect way to summarize how to start with Klaber, is to
Yeah,
build
and
your
another
trust
thing
in it.
along with that too, and which is a little bit different for sheep milk, because you're being able to freeze it, but it's also about the point where you freeze your milk. So fresher milk is always going to be able to make better cheese. And so when I was starting cheese making, another mistake I made was I would save my milk up for 3-4 days to be able to make a full pot of cheese. And so because raw milk is this living ecology, there's so many different bacteria and fungus living within that milk. Just because we put it in the refrigerator doesn't mean that it stops living. So all of those different bacteria and stuff are still feeding in that milk and multiplying, and they like to feed on the same food that our cheese making starter cultures like to feed on. So when we go to use that older milk for cheese making, not only is there less food for our starter cultures, but there's also more competition. And so it kind of makes it like there's more variables for us, and those cheeses don't always age as well as we wish that they would. So using fresher milk has also been like a really huge needle mover in me being able to make better cheeses for my family.
Okay, that makes sense.
I just think that's the biggest learning curve for so many people, is that like when you put milk in the refrigerator, a week later it's gonna taste a little bit different than the fresh. I mean, for me at least. There's some people with way more sensitive taste buds than me, I guess. But you can't automatically tell a huge difference in your milk when it's been in the refrigerator in a glass jar for about a week. But there's so much microbial activity going on there, and most of my friends who have just huge flops with their cheese, it's typically because they got busy, stuff's happening on the farm, it's springtime, and so they're like, oh, well, I have this milk that's a week old, I'll just, throw it in the cheese pot, put some starter culture in there, and on we go. And then it doesn't turn out very well at all, and that's because, the raw milk enzymes and stuff have started eating up those milk sugars, and there's nothing left for the starter culture to do, and so it just messes up the chemistry of your cheese. And then you unwrap it a couple months later and there's big holes in it, and you call this lady in Canada crying on Instagram Messenger going, why am I making cheese? This is terrible.
Exactly. And I tell people all the time, I use the metaphor of a painter. And so if you have a blank canvas, it's so much easier to come in and just make what you want to make. You can paint whatever you want to make, and it's going to turn out beautiful. If a kindergartner has already painted on that canvas and there's splatters everywhere, sure, you can still probably make something okay, but it's not going to be as beautiful as when you had that blank canvas and you could really turn it into anything that you wanted to. And so that's cheese making recipes. They're created on the baseline of that blank canvas. And so when we've changed the pH and we've changed the way that this milk has already started fermenting, that's just going to set you off on the wrong foot from the very beginning, which can really negatively affect your cheese.
Yeah, and the folks who make cheese from frozen sheep milk, the ones that I talk to, I mean, they milk the animal, they bring it inside, they filter it, it goes in the freezer. It is not sitting out. It goes, if you're going to make cheese with it later, because even when it goes in the freezer, there's still some, not as much, but a little bit of microbial activity. So if it sits out, or if it sits in the refrigerator for even a couple days, they say that's for drinking or that's for feta or something that's short term and we eat it quick. It's not going in the freezer for, later cheese making. It's, if you're going to freeze your sheep milk for cheese making, you milk, you strain, you freeze, and then when you pull it out to thaw it, you make cheese right away, because the pH is going to change. All these things that you can't see or taste necessarily are going to change, and that's not necessarily toxic for you, but you can have a perfectly safe cheese that still tastes absolutely vile. Ask me how I know. The dogs loved it. I didn't.
That one just hit me right in the funny.
Welcome. We unwrapped this cheese, and it was in my cheese cave, and making cheese in Kentucky is different because our humidity levels are so different throughout the entire year. So I mean, when they say, keep it in a really humid environment, it's like we're already in a really humid environment. I don't need to make quite the same small humidifier in my cheese cave as someone in Canada or someplace that's drier. So anyway, I had read this hack where you put a little bit of water in a plastic baggie and put that in your cheese cave, and I pulled it out a couple months later, and it was this neon pink mold slime, which I had just read about in a British cheese making book that was this is a gourmet cheese, it reeks for miles around, they pay top dollar for it. And I unwrap it, and Kyle walks in the kitchen. He's like, "What have you done?" And I'm like, "I apparently made gourmet food for the Brits." And he calls the dog. He's like, "Get it outside right now. That is not staying in my house." So I'm like, some British ancestor of mine is weeping right now, but that's okay.
You possibly had B. linens, which is this type of bacteria that actually like lives between our fingers and our toes.
Okay.
And is responsible for that stinky cheese that smells like feet. So
yeah, again, someone in France would have paid top dollar for it. Probably could have fenced in my entire property, but no way to market it, no way to get it to them. So the dog loved it.
Oh, that's hilarious. I mean, I'm sorry because my heart weeps for you for all the work that went into it, but at the same time, at least you're able to laugh about it now.
I mean, and we need healthy dogs, right? We have like no dog vet bills right now because they eat our French gourmet cheese and all that probably good.
Unfortunately, like when you're learning how to make aged cheeses, not so much fresh cheeses, but aged cheeses, like you have to kind of have those fails or learning experiences because they build confidence for you. Yeah. Like I get so many, like you said, I get so many questions from people like where they like voice message me or like, I've got these holes in my cheese, like what do I do? And you know, it's so hard not being there. I can't say that's a safe cheese. That's not a safe cheese. It's all about building that your own confidence and really being able to kind of judge it yourself, but starting off in the right foot, like using that fresh milk, using those strong starter cultures, and then like, you know, the safety of your cheese is going to be a lot more comfortable for you.
Yeah. Well, and you answered my question so well last summer when I messaged you, and I think I sent you a picture and I described the situation. I mean, and you were, I felt very gracious and brilliant in your response where you were like, you know, you may have accidentally captured a wild yeast that makes, I think it's Emmental gourmet cheese, or you may have trapped a pathogen. Unless you send it to a lab, you're not going to know. So your cow will make more milk. You can make more cheese. How worth it is it to you to take a risk on this? And I thought that was really a wise way to answer it because, like you said, I mean, you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs. Like you're not going to learn cheese making without having some humdingers. Like not every time, like whenever you learn any other cooking, you don't expect it to be perfect every single time. I think the pressure with cheese making is number one. We work so hard to get the frickin' milk to make this cheese, and cheese making is also work. And then at the end of it's like, that goes to the dog. Just kind of feels like a heartbreak, but it's just a learning curve like anything else. And that's why I think to have that homestead ecosystem is important because, you know, the dog, the pigs, the birds, they can all eat that cheese. You're saving in money, and then you don't get a tummy ache afterwards. So
exactly.
So Robin, with when you're aging cheeses, what do you use as like your quote unquote cheese cave?
Yeah, so I love calling it the cheese cave, but it's really actually just a refrigerator that I got off like buy and seller marketplace kind of thing. And then we converted it with it's called an Inkbird thermostat controller, so you can buy them on Amazon. They're only like $50 or something. And so there's you plug them into the wall, and then you plug the fridge into this little thermostat controller, and then you can set the temperature at whatever temperature you'd like. So I have it set at 50 degrees Fahrenheit because typically you're going to want your cheeses between 50 to 55 degrees. And I do find with the Inkbird, if it does get kind of hot, the temperature fluctuates a little bit. So 50 is kind of an ideal temperature for me to be able to age the most types of cheeses. Yeah, so I've set it to 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and then it will turn the fridge on if it gets too warm, and it will turn the fridge off if it gets too cold. And so it keeps it at around that 50 degrees Fahrenheit. You can't use the freezer of the fridge. So there's two things that matter when you're aging cheese, or big things that matter when you're aging cheese, which one is the temperature. So you want it between that 50 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit. And the other one is humidity, as Rachel said. So you can achieve different humidities in a lot of different ways, but typically you're going to want a fairly high humidity. Most cheeses are going to be aged at about 85% humidity. So if you're naturally aging these cheeses, which means you're like natural rind aging them, you're allowing them to form their own rinds, you have to really be paying close attention to this humidity because you don't want your cheeses to dry out. If it's too dry in there, all the moisture is going to be sucked out. It's going to crack the rinds. You're going to end up making these really brick type cheeses. So you have to be keeping that humidity a little higher. Okay. An easy way to be able to achieve that, there's a couple different ways, but the way that I do it is I just have like these Tupperware containers, like kind of shoebox type containers. I have a little mat in the bottom of them to just have some air circulation on the bottom. And then I put my cheeses in there, and then I loosely put the lid on, and then that will it gives them their own little chamber. And the cheeses are pretty good at, if they've got enough moisture in them, they're pretty good at keeping that humidity themselves. Sometimes you can put a piece of like crumpled up wet paper towel in there to increase the humidity a little bit. And I even have like some hydrometers. I never say that right, but I have them like individually in each box so I can make sure that I'm keeping that humidity high enough. But if you do that, even if you don't have the hydrometers, they're pretty good at keeping that 80 to 85% in those little boxes. If you're vacuum sealing or waxing your cheeses, primarily I vacuum seal most of my cheeses. You don't have to worry about controlling humidity, so you only have to worry about temperature. So that's like a way that it makes it a lot easier and a lot more approachable if you're not having the time to there's some care that goes into creating a natural rind on your cheeses, which is fun and really cool, but it also sometimes we just don't have the time for it. So that's a way that the moisture is not going to escape, and they're able to just be a little more self-sufficient after you make them.
Okay. So my one hard cheese that I made, I did vacuum seal it. So, because I was like, I don't want to deal with humidity. Like, I don't want to get this far and then destroy it, right? Yeah. So I am one of those cooks that I can follow a recipe or even deviate it from a little bit. The first time it turns out really good. I have a really hard time duplicating things. Probably because I don't like follow the recipe to a T the first time. Like I just I'm gonna wing it for this part. And then Zach's like, that's really good. Like that's on the remake menu. And I'm like, oh man.
Like, come back, little muse, whisper in my ear again. What did I do?
Want to know more about dairy sheep? Did you know that I write books on the topic? There is my big book, which is published by Sawdust Publishing and is available on my website or Amazon and sawdustpublishing.com. In this volume, The Guide to Homestead Dairy Sheep, you will find everything I wished I knew when I first started raising dairy sheep. I feature other dairy shepherds and go into detail on topics like different breeds for milking, parasite management, milk sharing with lambs, how to set your flock up for the best lambing and therefore milking season possible, and I briefly discuss digestion and nutrition of sheep. Since writing this book, folks have asked me questions about more nuanced topics, so I have begun writing ebooks that are topic-specific that you can purchase on my website and receive as an instant download and print at your convenience. Currently we have Bringing Your New Sheep Home, which explains in detail our step-by-step method of introducing new dairy sheep onto your homestead and getting them used to you as their shepherd. Since there are currently no dairy-specific hair breed sheep available, dairy shepherds will have to shear their sheep annually and then decide what to do with their wool. Wool has a lot of misconceptions surrounding it, and I want to help shepherds understand that it is a commodity and not a burden. So I wrote my other ebook, 5 Uses of Wool on the Homestead, which is designed to give you practical ideas on how to utilize this amazing product around your homestead the second you shear it off your sheep. The ebooks are only available on my website at whoopsiedaisyfarm.com.
Yes. So I have not attempted to make a second hard cheese.
Yeah.
I obviously really need to for multiple reasons, but it'll be interesting to see if my future cheeses turn out as well as my first cheese.
Yeah, that's the thing, too, about cheese making, because I'm totally the same way about all my other cooking, like bread making, all the things, I'm just going to toss this in and we'll see how it goes.
Yes.
I'm pretty confident. I think, it's going to work out. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yes.
But with cheese making, you got to be a little bit more, type A, which is hard. But just because cheese making recipes and the directions in them have been created to help you achieve, a certain type of cheese. And it's always it still blows my mind, and it blows a lot of people's minds when I talk about, the first, even though there's thousands of different cheeses in the world, the first 4 steps of all of those cheeses are pretty much the same, where you're warming your milk up, you're adding in your starter culture, you're adding in your rennet, and then you're allowing that milk to coagulate into this curd mass, and then you now take that curd mass and you can take it on all sorts of different journeys to help you create all sorts of different types of cheeses. So the recipes have really been created to help you create those similar types of cheeses. Like a cheddar, has certain steps in it that are helping you actually achieve a cheddar, even though it's not that different than making a Gouda, but the end cheese is going to be a lot different. That's one of the hard things that people struggle with learning how to make cheese, especially homesteaders, because we're such like DIYers, but it's hard to DIY when you're making cheese.
Yeah. Yes, I will admit when I made the cheese, because I had done enough research to know like you want to make sure like that you have a pretty clean environment, sterile utensils, so to avoid contamination. I was definitely very meticulous about making sure I didn't contaminate anything. So I would suspect that if I continue down that path, I'll probably be okay.
Yeah. And it's like that's why one of the reasons I loved reading David Dasher's book that first time, The Art of Natural Cheese Making, because it really did help me have a little bit more trust in my milk, and trust in my starter cultures, because I was the exact same way. Like when I started, background OR nurse, like I treated it like this sterile procedure.
Yes.
Everything had its place. Everything got sterilized before I started, which was really, there's nothing wrong with that, but it also made it so hard to fit it into my life, especially with kids around.
Yeah.
And, you have to come into the kitchen and like nobody can make crumbs on the counter or anything like that. So that definitely has loosened through the years, and especially starting, to trust my starter cultures a little bit more. And that's one of the reasons I love Clabber culture as well, because when you're using a freeze-dried starter culture, it's great, but you do have to be a little bit cleaner, because that is coming in as kind of a foreign ingredient, and it has to come in and be able to really take hold of your milk. And who's saying, that if you have a sourdough starter on the counter too, and you dip your spoon into that, or you touch something connected to that sourdough starter and you touch your milk, you could potentially cause that contamination. Whereas when you're using a Clabber culture that you're feeding every day, it's like it knows your milk. You feed it your specific milk every single day. So it comes into the milk, it's ready to work. It's going to be able to kind of take the majority vote as soon as it gets in there, which is something that's really reassuring to me versus, when I was using freeze-dried starter cultures and just having to be just that little bit cleaner.
So what are like some of your favorite cheeses that you make?
Ooh, it's hard to choose. My husband's favorite cheeses are Colby and like string cheese, like Wisconsin.
Yes.
My favorite cheeses are probably Brie and Gouda. Okay. I would say, yeah. And my kids, they like Havarti. My older, she'll eat anything. Like she's like my cheese tester. If I'm like, is this too strong? I ask her, and she'll eat it, and she can handle probably stronger cheeses than I can handle.
Okay.
Whereas like my younger two, they like kind of milder cheeses, like they like that Colby, they like just a mozzarella, something that's a little bit, I would say, kind of bland, but they like that. And really my goal is to just make cheeses that my family is going to want to eat,
right?
So I can make all the different cheeses that there is, but it's not going to serve me unless my family actually wants to eat it. So I do like standardly make those kind of cheeses that they're wanting to eat more often than not.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're doing it for, right? Is to feed our family and friends. So it's only natural to make sure we're making the cheeses that they like. It's just like having a garden. You're not going to plant a bunch of things just because they're cool and everybody else likes them. If you don't like them, why would you bother wasting your time in that?
But you easily can get swayed when you first start off and you get excited about it. It's like if you have a garden too, you're easily like, I'm going to plant like 20 varieties of lettuce. And then and then you realize you didn't actually need to plant 20 varieties of lettuce, but you kind of get swept up in the excitement of it.
Yeah.
So that is one piece of advice that I recommend to people that just are getting going, is just pick one cheese and just make it often and learn how to make it really, really well. And that's gonna jumpstart you so much better than trying to jump around and make all sorts of different types of cheeses.
Although I will say conversely, it was kind of funny because I thought my favorite cheeses would be like a cheddar cheese, and like when we looked at what we bought cheese wise, it was cheddar, brie, and mozzarella. And a friend of mine in Florida who has dairy sheep, she started making cheese, and she was like, oh, you've got to try Wensleydale. It's so good. Never had Wensleydale in my life. Had no reason to get Wensleydale. Is Wensleydale a beginner cheese? No. And Lee, if you're watching on YouTube, you are entirely responsible for my stress last year of learning how to make this cheese because it's your fault. But I now love Wensleydale cheese. And, if I had to pick one cheese, that would be, and it's in the cheddar family. So it still has that, you do a cheddaring process and it's aged and absolutely phenomenal with sheep milk. But then I was telling another friend of mine about cheese and this friend was like, oh, so when are you going to make blue cheese? And I'm like, I hate blue cheese. I am never making blue cheese. That is absolutely vile. And she was like, hang on. Are you referring to the blue cheese we ate in college on the buffet on the salad bar in our college? And I said, yes. And she said, that is not blue cheese. So I did go ahead and buy some Roquefort starter cultures so that I can try some Roquefort cheese, the sheep blue cheese this year. So we'll see how that goes. So I will say, learn the cheese making skills first for absolute sure.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, once you learn the skills, don't be afraid to pick like 1 or 2 cheeses per season just to see if you like them. And if you don't, again, make sure you have some birds or dogs or pigs who will eat it and then start over next time and don't make it ever again, like the pink abomination.
Exactly. I totally agree with that. Once you build those foundational skills, because the cheeses aren't really that different, getting started in those cheeses is going to be the same, and then it's just bringing in a few extra little skills, and mostly it's the aging part. The aging will test you. But once you learn how to make a few types of cheeses and you have that those foundational skills in your back pocket, you're just always going to have those. You can pick up really any type of cheese you want to learn how to make.
Also, when they say age Manchego for 6 months, don't age it for 3 months. Age it for 6 months minimum. just saying.
It was probably in the instructions.
Eating your cheeses, seeing the differences in taste between 3 months, 6 months, a year.
Yeah.
Seeing how much it actually changes it. It can become it becomes a whole different product. That saying, the green cheese, you really understand that when you start making your own cheese.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So if asking for a friend, if somebody made a farmhouse cheddar, cut the wheel in half and put the other half back in the cheese cave to continue aging, and they ate the other portion that they made, and it was really good, it should be fine. It just kept aging the other half of the wheel. Okay.
Yeah, I do that all the time. If I only need half a wheel of cheese, I'll just cut the half off, and then we'll eat that at maybe 3 months, and then I'll age the other half for 6 months. Technically, if you're gonna get fancy, which I don't get fancy very often, but technically, if you're gonna get fancy, it's better if it ages as a full wheel. But it's not gonna make or break your cheese. I do it all the time. It's gonna be fine.
I still have half a wheel in my cheese cave that honestly I forget about it. So I cut it in half, and then I quartered it, and I put the other quarter in the freezer, which actually, I am ashamed to say it, that's in the freezer too. Because myself and my daughter, we love dairy. We love all things dairy, but especially cheese. And I was like, she would have ate that entire wheel in a day if I let her. You know what I mean? I'm just like, Mama has hours into this kid. She's 3. So to try to explain and get her to understand, we gotta savor this. Yes, I agree. It's so good.
I'm a 3-year-old.
So admittedly, I kind of forgot about it because she stopped pestering me about getting into that cheese cave to check on the cheese and stuff. So it's still sitting in there. And I did vacuum seal it. So when I get home tonight, I will have to try it. And I'll let you ladies know how it tasted, because I'm sure she'll be ecstatic.
Sometimes, I haven't had it happen very often, but I have had it happen a couple times where I feel like it oxidizes or something like that, and it does end up getting a weird flavor. Sometimes if you let it air out for a couple hours, pull it out of the vacuum seal bag, let it breathe, that will help with it. But I've only had that happen a few times. Usually you're pretty much good to go if you cut it in half.
Okay. All right. I'll have to check into it and then make sure I put it someplace. We have a lab who is the goodest boy ever because he sleeps with my daughter at nighttime. But for whatever reason, he has recently taken to counter surfing, and nothing is sacred. And I'm just like, Bobo, you're lucky that you are so loved, because nothing is sacred with him around. And he, when I say this just happened, within the last 6 months, this has just happened. So I don't know what has changed, but I probably would have some few choice words if he ate my cheese.
Yeah.
Yes, that would not be nice.
It might be the end of the road of our friendship.
Yeah. Cheese.
Not the cheese. Anything with the cheese. Yeah. So, with that being said, we are at time. And so something that Rachel and I always like to do is we always like to ask our guest, what is one tip that you would give to someone in this circumstance who hasn't made cheese or is very new to making cheese? Like, what is something that words of encouragement or words of advice that you would give to them to hopefully like help make the experience not as stressful or more enjoyable for them?
Yeah, oh, I have so many advice, but that's part of the problem, that you can just get too much advice. It becomes too overwhelming. You can get stuck in that research phase of it where you're like, I don't even know where to start because there's so much to know. And that's the thing about cheese making, is that like the day that I die, there's still going to be 1 billion things that I don't know about it, but it doesn't matter. I made good cheese when I first started as an absolute brand new beginner, and you know, I make good cheese now, so it will kind of meet you where you're at, which is really cool. And so I think the biggest thing is just getting started and not getting stuck in the research phase. So you know, go onto the Cheese Supplies website and get yourself a freeze-dried starter culture, get yourself some rennet, go to the grocery store, get yourself some salt that doesn't have any additives in it, and then get yourself a good quality milk source, and just start off with, you know, a simple cheese. A good one to start with is feta, especially if you have sheep milk. A really authentic one to start off with, or even just like some fresh cheeses too. Like there's nothing wrong with starting off with yogurt. Like that's a great way to just get comfortable working with milk. Or start off with some like cream cheese or like a quark or a chev. Those are great kind of fresh cheeses to get started with, and just sort of build your confidence by doing, which is just probably the greatest way to be able to get started.
Yeah. Okay.
Sure.
Well, thank you for those words of wisdom. So for all you who are,
do you want to plug your book too? Plug your book.
Oh yes, I have a cheese making book. Can I grab
Yes.
it?
Oh yes, yeah.
I meant to bring my copy and I totally forgot. And if I show my face, the toddler will melt. So I'm staying here and hiding.
You're hiding.
I am a coward. I'm a coward, my little tyrant.
Yeah, so this is the Cheese from Scratch, Natural Cheese Making from Home book, published by Homestead Living Publishing. They did such a good job. The photos are so beautiful, but also there's so many different recipes in here. And it is a really great one for like meeting you where you're at, because it's going to start you off from, you know, beginner dairy processing, learning how to make yogurt, learning how to make like a sweet, simple ricotta, things like that. And then it just works you through, slowly builds skills up until you're making cheddars and alpines and mozzarellas and like harder, more complex things like that. So yes, you can find it on Amazon or on Homestead Living. And they also have so many other amazing homestead books on homesteadliving.com too.
And I do want to plug it because I own a lot of cheese making books. Like I don't need this many cheese making books, but I have a problem. And, you know, most of them are like your first chapter or two is, this is the process of making cheese. Here's the equipment, sterilize everything. Don't sneeze while you're making cheese because you'll contaminate it. And then it's just like your recipes. And like, there might be a little bit of instruction on technique or whatever, but with Robin's book, I mean, it's like a letter to a friend. Like she's sitting you down, she's sharing her story. There's like every cheese she makes. That road is very loud. Every cheese she makes, there's like an introduction to it and she talks you through it, and there's a lot of information. So I do think it's very unique in the cheese making books, because it is, you know, the teaching style I prefer to learn from and to teach by is, you know, you're taking you by the hand. This is not scary. It's simple. It's very doable. People have been doing it for a while. Here's what you watch out for, but for the most part, it's okay. And it's well worth the investment, especially if you're a beginning cheesemaker.
Oh, thank you so much, Rachel. Yeah, I think it, you know, just remembering that cheese has been made for thousands and thousands of years, and it's only really kind of got complicated in the last 150. So, you know, like we can take it back to our homestead kitchens and learn how to make it in the way that, you know, is going to fit into our lifestyle, which is helpful.
Yeah, for sure. We got to get you some dairy sheep though, so you can have more.
Yeah, I know.
Hey, she's in Canada. It's like she's got purebred registered East Frisians.
You've got all the genetics in Canada. I'm so jealous.
Maybe I'll just surprise my husband and bring home a dairy sheep.
There you go. There you go.
Payback's fair play.
Yeah, he's got a new, for our pigs, he's got a nice little farrowing pen that would work perfect for a sheep.
Yeah. Move over, Piggly Wigglies.
Yeah.
Poor Mr. Jackson's like, you can't talk to those Americans anymore.
So, Robin, for those who want to reach out or follow you, what are the best ways to reach out to you, or what social media platforms are you on?
Yeah, probably Instagram or Facebook too. I just figured out how to make my Instagram posts go on Facebook, so I've been on there a little more often lately. I also have a YouTube channel that I am usually too busy to post on, but there's some like good tutorials and stuff and getting started videos on there. And then you can always just email me too at cheesefromscratch@outlook.com, and I'm always happy to answer people's questions or their cheese emergencies, although I'm sometimes not as prompt as I should be. But if if you have any questions, just shoot me an email or a message. I sometimes won't see it if it's like on Instagram. It kind of gets buried, but
yeah, you probably get a lot of requests through Instagram, I would admit. That's where I found you, was Instagram.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not so good at checking there.
Well, I think it's important to note to folks that we are all human. We are all have busy lives. We're all raising children as well, plus livestock and running the farm or homestead, whatever label you want to put on it. We're all incredibly busy. So it's okay if we don't respond to,
I tell people squeaky wheel gets the grease. I mean, it's
even
if it's a big account, it's like all that means is they posted regularly and know how to play the algorithms. They're just a normal person like you. So if that's a question, they don't respond, just hit them again, say like, hey, did you see this? Because I know that's a problem for me sometimes. Or I'll see it and then a lamb baws and I've got to drop the phone and run off and my ADHD kicks in and I was like, I was doing something. What was it? I was thinking of a response to someone important. But
and like one of the coolest things that I think from like doing this business now is seeing like how many people that I've taught are now like teachers in their own communities, and that like people are starting to make cheese more on their homesteads and starting to farm and have dairy animals more and be able to make those local connections, because there's nothing that like I can talk online all day, but it's not going to be like being there in somebody's kitchen and and seeing them make the cheese and smelling what's going on and like all that kind of thing. So that's a really thing that I encourage people to do as well, is just like reach out to other dairy members of your community and and see if there's anybody that that can teach you something, or that you can teach them something.
It's interesting you mentioned that. So there's a gal in my community who it's just been the past few months that I found her on social media, but this weekend she is actually doing like a gathering for anyone who wants to learn how to make cheese. And basically it's like, you can come, like it's a long process, but I'll be here from noon. We'll finish around dinner time sometime and we'll just, talk about the process. And she's going to be making cheese during that process too. But like that way you can ask questions, interact with other people that are local to the area. So I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be a really cool resource for all of us in this community.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, all right. Well, with that, since I did mention, we are all busy moms and homesteaders. Some of us are lambing, some of us are about ready to calve. And I need to go back to my 8 to 5 job. So thank you, Robin, so much for coming and joining us and, talking about cheese. I have a feeling that we're going to have listeners that request you come back, because I feel like we just like scratched the surface with cheese making. And I feel like there's a lot of questions out there that folks are going to want to ask a quote unquote expert about. So, and if you've written a book, that makes you an expert. I'm talking to you too, Rachel.
No, I know. It's like, get a PhD or write a book. And as the daughter of a PhD, write the book. The PhD is way more expensive and nerdier. So just write the book.
Absolutely. So
thanks for coming, Robin.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me.
Yep. All right, we'll see you later.
Sounds good. Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to the Woolly Way podcast.
We hope you enjoyed our episode and have gleaned at least one tip you can implement in your flock right away. If you like what you heard, please hit the subscribe button, and if you wouldn't mind, leave us a review. This helps others find our podcast so that they can enjoy learning about dairy sheep along with you. The Woolly Way podcast is a production of Whoopsie Daisy Farm and Crafty Fox Acres. For updates and information about our show, follow us on Facebook or Instagram.
Subscribe to our YouTube and email list and look us up at whoopsiedaisyfarm.com to find both. Have a particular guest you'd like us to host or a topic you'd like us to cover?
Fill out our contact form on our website or shoot us an email at whoopsiedaisyfarm@gmail.com. See you next time.